The following podcast is a SIMPRONTO Media production.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. And we have Dana Skoglund on the show, and her website is danaskoglund.com. And she is really passionate about you becoming the healthiest and happiest version of yourself. So, Dana, welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a yoga teacher and a yoga health coach. So yoga health coach is what's different from a yoga health coach from a normal health coach is that I teach people the daily habits and routines based off of Ayurveda, which is yoga's sister science. So I have a handful, actually 8 habits that I coach people into to bring their bodies back into balance, to balance hormones, to optimize the different organs, to eliminate toxins, and to really be the healthiest version of yourself. Because Ayurveda is really all about longevity, and it's a preventative holistic medicine.
And isn't Ayurveda, isn't it kind of like, wasn't it rooted in Indian culture?
Yeah.
Is that kind of where it came from?
Yeah. So it's over 5,000 years old. It's the oldest healing science in history. And it comes from the same place that yoga comes from. So it comes from the same ancient text. So that's another reason why it's called the yoga's sister science. And it is, yes, from India and still practiced today. And more, it's coming to the West, and more people know about it and are interested in learning about it, because I think it's coming in and people are seeing that, modern methods are falling short, and this is time tested and is really, it's very practical, and it makes a lot of sense when people understand the concepts.
So let's talk about how Ayurveda and intermittent fasting kind of click together.
Okay. So probably the core tenet of Ayurveda is all about optimizing gut health. And it really recognizes that everything begins in the gut. And in Ayurveda, there's a concept called Agni, which is all about your digestive fire. And it said your Agni is the most important factor to your health. And you want to have a really strong, balanced digestive fire. And this is because when you eat something, you want to fully burn it. And you want to burn it, and you want to then utilize it for fuel or for building healthy tissue. And when you don't do that effectively, what's left over, it's kind of like, and the result of it not fully burning is something called ama, which is like this toxic sludge residue that sticks around in your body and goes and finds weak organs and is what basically creates all disease. So the first thing that I teach for people to really balance out that digestive fire is to space meals. Because, in the West, we have this, we've been marketed to over the last 50, 60 years that we want to eat a meal and then have a snack, and then eat a meal and then have a snack, and then eat a meal and have a snack. And the problem with that is that we are never giving our digestive system a break. And I love in Ayurveda, there's this concept of your digestion is a male organ, and your heart is a female organ. And your heart is always going. It's kind of like women. We're like always going. We don't stop. We don't rest. We're not good at resting. We're always busying ourselves, as opposed to like the male organ of the digestion. Like if you've got, a man in your life, they're really good at just kicking back, feet up, relaxing.
Oh my gosh, this is so true.
And turning off. And that our digestion works best when we give it that space between meals. So it's not only, fasting overnight and having that, minimum of 14 hours and, 14 up to 20 or however much you want to fast, but it's also the spacing between the meals themselves, so that you can fully go through the digestive process. And there's all these different stages of digestion in Ayurveda. And when you don't allow the food to go through all the phases, it gets interrupted. And then when it's interrupted, like mid-digestion, then we don't really fully burn away the food. And then that results in like this toxicity, this sludge that wreaks havoc on the body and messes with our hormones and basically creates all the problems, the health problems that we experience.
Well, I've seen pictures of you on your website and you have an incredible body.
Oh, thanks.
So let's start by talking about what you personally do as far as your eating goes. So what does like a typical day look like for you? When do you start eating? When do you stop eating? And what are you eating? What's a typical day look like?
So I wake up around 5, and then I have a whole morning routine that I go through in terms of exercise and meditation and journaling. And then after I've done all that, then I have a bulletproof coffee, and that is around 7:30, 8. And then I don't eat anything until about 9:30. And then at 9:30, I make a green smoothie. And then I don't eat anything until lunch. And right now, being summer, I'm having a really big salad with lots of veggies and sprouts and sauerkraut and some protein. So whether that's chicken or I do eat animal protein. So I have some protein and then just tons of vegetables. And then I don't eat anything. And and that's one of the things in Ayurveda is it's all about eating the majority of the food during daylight hours and having dinner be earlier and lighter and lunch being the main meal, because that really is when our digestive fire is the strongest. So we eat dinner around 5:30, and that's usually, again, just lots of vegetables and some sort of protein. And so then I'm pretty much fasting from 5:30 until 9:30, except for the bulletproof, which keeps me in the insulin fast.
Gotcha. So let's talk about bulletproof coffee, because the people that, and this is a very controversial topic, and I will tell you my opinion about bulletproof coffee, and then you can tell me yours.
Okay.
So, well, why don't you tell me yours, then I'll tell you mine.
So I'm kind of obsessed with just natural biohacking and anything that we can do to kind of get an edge on being as healthy as possible. So I've read all of Dave Asprey's books, and I love that he brings in the science. So he's the inventor, for those that aren't aware, of bulletproof coffee. And I want to fast, and I know that I need something to be able to extend my fast. And I love the health benefits of the MCT oil, the brain benefits, but also because just having black coffee, because I know that there are, the controversy of like adding anything with calories during fasting period, you're not getting the full autophagy. And, it's not like a true fast. However, the pure acid in your stomach with nothing in can also create its own problems. So that putting the fat in there helps it's not as hard on your gut, like having coffee on on nothing. So that's kind of the reason why I add the fat to the coffee. It's, for the benefits, but also for the, it being just easier on the gut, and obviously being able to extend the fast longer, like get a few more hours there without food. And the fat doesn't increase the insulin, which allows you to stay in fat burning.
Yeah. Well, my opinion of it is that basically, when you're taking in calories, obviously especially bulletproof coffee can have anywhere from 200 to 400 calories, right? And a massive amount of fat. And so when you're thinking about it, your body can either use fat for fuel,
right,
from your own body, or it's going to use either the glycogen that you already have or the fat that you have. And so for me personally, when I did the bulletproof coffee, I either gained weight or didn't lose weight. I've actually done it twice. I kind of just wanted to experiment to see how I would do. And I've done it twice. And once when I did it I implemented it in for a week or two, and I actually gained weight. And then I did it another time, and my weight loss stalled. And this is what I tell people. You're now incorporating an extra 200 and it's very easy to do. I've seen people do bulletproof coffee and they've got 600 calories and 60 calories of fat, right? So
Right.
it's easy to see why you could either gain weight or stall when you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so, the only time that I'll sometimes have a bulletproof coffee at this point is that, and like I said, if you want to, if people don't know what that is, it's basically when you're having coffee with fat in it, right? It's also called a keto coffee, but it's basically where people either add butter, MCT oil, Dave Asprey, who created it, and putting, Dave's proprietary blend. People do cacao butter. There's all kinds of versions of bulletproof coffee.
Yeah.
But the amount of calories and fat that you're adding in is just an exorbitant amount. And obviously, if you're fasting, ideally you want to have just water, right? That's like the ideal, or black coffee or black tea is going to be your ideal. So for me, the people that I've seen do well on the bulletproof coffee are people who are, and they still are able to stay thin, are people who are doing massive amounts of working out. So like for you, you are a yoga instructor, right? So you are burning a ton of fat. You're burning a ton of fuel. You're still able to eat in an 8-hour window, right? So you're doing an 8-hour window, but having that bulletproof coffee, because you're doing so much strenuous working out, it allows you to be able to do it. And so for me personally, with all the people I've seen, when people want to do intermittent fasting, what's the number one goal? There's lots of goals, right? There's health reasons, there's autophagy, there's all kinds of different things of why people doing it, right? Because the autophagy is the cleanup and repair process that happens in your body. But what I always say is, if your body first is going to go to your gut and it's going to say, we've got all this fat right here, it's going to first use that before it's getting the fat off your hips. So that's just something to always keep in mind. And I think the reason why you're able to stay so thin and have an amazing body is because you're doing so much working out. So I just want to kind of say that out there, because what will happen is somebody will be listening to this podcast and they'll be doing really good. And then maybe they have a stall because they're adding in this bulletproof coffee, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I it's true. Like your body's going to either, if you give it fat, it's not going to it won't need to source its own fat. So no, absolutely. And partly it is, and I am not doing it for the weight loss, but I for sure, like, it makes sense. Like the whole keto movement of just eating so much fat, like you still have to like look at how much you're taking in, because that, and and when. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it helps, it's satisfying, it's creamy, it's, you're
tastes
like,
good.
"Ooh,
Yeah.
good." Yeah. And so it kind of relieves that hangry feeling that you get with fasting, where you're just like, "Ugh."
Right.
So it does help with that. And it is, full of good, high quality fats to keep you in the fat burning state of ketosis, which is what you want. But again, if you're looking at it for weight loss, it's great for keeping your blood sugar level. Right. So I love that. But as far as for weight loss, I've really seen it either gain weight or help or make people stall in their weight loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
and I think for me, I just have to like commit to going through that process of like slowly increasing that window with nothing. Because now that my body's used to it, I do get really hungry at that time. And then I'm able to go like that 2 more hours. But no, absolutely. I agree with you. And it is something that I've thought of, like, I would probably get more benefits from my fasting if I pushed the coffee later, had that be at 9:30 versus 7:30. So
I would love for you to just try it for like, maybe let's say, I always tell people this, like, obviously you're very thin, but anyone who's very thin, they still have moments where they gain 3 pounds. They might gain 5 pounds. We all go through that where, you have a moment when you do that. And I'd love to see, and you'll have to email me and tell me the results. If you just cut that coffee out, still continue to do your 8-hour window, do you shed that 3 pounds or 5 pounds or whatever, if you happen to gain it?
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your approach with people wanting to extend it, a couple more hours, but feeling really hungry? And
so for me, I would rather see somebody. So for me, if I really wanted to do that, I would say either doing a tiny bit of bone broth would be one version, or doing even a little bit of coffee, just doing coffee black, because caffeine in itself, right? That's going to be your best choice, because caffeine in itself is going to help you extend it. Or doing caffeine with like heavy whipping cream, which again, like this much heavy whipping cream, again, you're getting it with maybe, I don't know, you could have a cup of coffee with 60 calories, or even you could do 30 calories of creamer versus making it. What I see happening with this bulletproof coffee is people just go so overboard, and they're having 300 to 500 calories of fat. It's just so much. So my choice is I would go ahead and just go as long as you can, have that black coffee, and then, try to go for a walk or do something to get your mind off of it so you can get to where you need to go. Another really good hack is just a teaspoon of like pickle juice, because a lot of times you just need sodium, and that's a good hack to kind of get you, especially I usually use pickle juice and bone broth only when I'm going for longer than 24 hours. Anytime I go longer than a 24-hour fast, but usually, I eat in a 6-hour window every day, or some days I just do one meal a day. It just depends on how big my meal is for that day.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's go back to we got off track with the bulletproof, but that's such a good one because people ask it all the time. But let's go back to the Ayurveda. So I want to really dig in because I think that gut health is so important. So what are some other principles that you're pulling in from the Ayurveda?
Yeah. So the first being like the timing of meals, which is making lunch the main meal, because most people, dinner is the main meal, and it's just part of our culture. But it didn't used to be. Like pre-industrial revolution, our main meal was at lunch, when the men didn't have to go to the factories or go to the work, and we would come inside during the middle of the day. We would sit and have like a nice big lunch. Then there would be a little bit of a rest after, and then dinner was actually called supper, which was often just like a little something, a little soup or a little stew, just to tie you over. So I often say, if you could just switch one thing, which is having lunch be the main meal versus dinner, I've seen a lot of people lose weight with just that switch. So, breakfast being smaller if you're having breakfast, lunch being bigger, and then dinner being smaller, because the digestive fire actually mimics the sun. So when the sun is highest, the internal sun, that internal fire is the strongest. So there's also been really amazing studies with mice showing, when the times of day that they're eating really affects how they're processing the food and whether they're gaining weight and, all these other health markers, if they're eating at night versus eating during the day. So that's the first thing is, just when you're eating and how much when. And then obviously taking out any kind of snacking. So we don't need the snacks. Snacks are often just, packaged processed foods, unless you're snacking on like nuts or things, but that's still, it's just calories you don't need. So saving all your calories for your meals so that you get that break. Then the other ones are, what you're eating, obviously. So it's pretty common sense, eating whole foods diet, but really looking at eating more seasonally. So seeing what's available. I think the best way to do that easily is just to shop from the farmer's market, because you always know that what you're getting there is going to be seasonal. It's going to be local, which means that the food is going to be, have a higher vitamin content because it's not going to be shipped when it's unripe. So eating seasonally, eating locally as much as possible, but also eating like what makes sense in terms of your ancestry. I think we try to conform based on like what we've read is like the latest best diet, but everyone's different. And in Ayurveda, there's this deep understanding that there's no one size fits all, and different food affects different people in different ways. So we can't just follow some guidebook or some expert's recommendations, because it might not work for our body. So I take people through a process of an elimination diet and then reintroducing foods to really see how they affect your body and how well you digest it, because it all depends on how well you digest it. And some people can eat beans, some people can't eat beans. And that being said, when you really do these other things to optimize your gut health, you're able to eat more foods. It's like the unhealthier your gut is, the more sensitive you are and the more just gut issues you have. But when you clear all that up, then you can even try to reintroduce some of those foods back in and see how they affect you. So it's finding your diet.
What about eating foods? One of the things I heard is that like you should eat, kind of in the wintertime, eating warm foods and cooked foods.
Yeah.
And in the summertime, eating more like raw foods. Is that true? Or talk about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the principles of Ayurveda is that there's these energetics of food, and some foods are cooling, some foods are warming. And what is happening inside of our body is a reflection of what's happening in the environment. So that's why it's like we really want to pay attention to the cycles of nature and the rhythms of nature and the seasons and the weather, because that's what's happening actually inside of our gut. So in the wintertime, when it's cold outside, we want to warm up. We want to bring in the energetics of warming food, and that helps to counter that coldness that's in the environment. So eating more spiced foods, because that's one way that we can kind of warm up our foods, having the temperature be warm. And the foods in the wintertime are more like root vegetables. It's things that, it lends itself to having more cooked, more spiced, more kind of grounded foods, because the energetics of the winter is like cold and light. So when we go into summer, it's hot outside. So we want to eat more cooling foods and cooler temperature foods. So having more raw stuff and salads and things like that. So that's kind of big picture why we do that, because we're trying to always create harmony and balance. And the way we do that is through the balance of opposites. So if it's cold outside, we want to create internal heat. If it's hot outside, we want to cool things down inside.
Talk a little bit about drinking with your meals. It's funny, I had a guy who is originally from Canada, and I think he might be French from his origin. And he said, it was funny because he was over and I said, what can I get you to drink? And he said, well, you shouldn't be drinking with your meals. He's like, Americans are the only ones who drink with their meals. He's like, and he looked at everyone around the table and he's like, none of you guys should be drinking anything, not even sipping, because it'll interfere with your digestion. You should be drinking fluids 2 hours before meals, 2 hours after meals. But while you're eating, you shouldn't be drinking. So talk about that. Is that anything within Ayurveda?
In Ayurveda, there is this idea that there's like gastric juices that you don't want to dilute too much. So yes, you can absolutely sip water for sure. Like that's okay. That's allowed, but you don't want to drink a lot of water, because that will dilute it. So you won't be able to digest your food as effectively. But actually, it's really good to drink a cup of water like 15 minutes before, because it's kind of like it lubricates the digestive tract and also just kind of gets your body prepared to digest food. And then while you're eating, small sips of water is absolutely fine. And then actually an hour after, and you might even notice that after about an hour, you're in a certain phase of digestion and you actually will feel thirsty, and you do want to drink another cup of water then. So I wouldn't say, I don't agree with that advice of like nothing and then not 2 hours before or after. I think that sips are okay and actually good. It's a good thing.
Hey guys, one of the things that will take your weight loss to the next level is coaching. You can either work one-on-one with me or one of our certified private coaches. If you'd like, you can schedule your free call. It's a 10-minute strategy call just to see if coaching is going to really take you to the next level. Don't just take my word for it. Listen to this recent review a happy coaching client sent in.
Thanks so much for your help and guidance. I never could have done it without you.
The other thing is listening to the audiobook. Listening to the audiobook and getting the video course that I've done, people are seeing dramatic results. If you just listen to the audiobook 30 minutes a day over and over and over again and get the video course, go to chantelrayway.com and check out the video course. You won't be sorry you did. Yeah, I think for me, I've gotten to the point where I really try like 30 minutes before I eat. And while I'm eating to drink nothing. I might take like a sip or two, like if I'm really, thirsty. But I think the biggest thing is, everyone forgets that digestion starts in your mouth as soon as you start to chew your food. Chewing signals your salivary glands to start producing saliva, which that saliva contains enzymes to help you break down the food. Totally. And so... But especially what I've seen is I actually have a digestive enzyme that I created myself. It's on my website at chantelrayway.com, but it has betaine, pepsin in it, but it also has enzymes. And I think that there's certain people, me including, that I just from overeating over in the past years, when I was younger, I was in my 20s, I was bulimic. And so for about 3 or 4 years, I threw up. So my stomach acid is not what it needs to be. And so I have to take that digest aid for me is really important to take right when I eat my meals. And it's really important that I don't drink much. Like I might take 1 or 2 little sips, but because I can get crazy with it, it's just better for me not to have any water there at all. Yeah. And just really fuel up with water outside of my meal times. Yeah.
I'm the same. I don't get thirsty when I'm eating. I don't feel the need to drink water. And I do focus just like you, drinking the water between the meals. And that just helps me kind of space those meals and not have this need to want to snack in between meals. So, yeah.
Now, one of the questions that we're getting a ton of is about sugar. And I'm hearing people even more, I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but they're feeling like they're just craving so much sugar. Yeah. Do you have do you have sugar at all, or do you just have it
completely sugar?
Give us some tips to control that.
Yeah. So no, I'm completely sugar free because I used to have a problem. Well, I don't know how big of a problem. For me, it was a problem. I had a hard time with moderation. It's once I had a little bit, I just wanted more and more. And that is because sugar creates this huge dopamine hit. Any concentrated substance, whether that's sugar or flour or alcohol or processed foods, it creates an exaggerated dopamine hit, which has this feeling of, it feels good. It feels it's pleasurable, and it's this, it's the reward hormone. Now, that's one of the reasons why it's so addictive and why it can be such a problem, because your brain knows this. It's oh, this feels really good. Make sure to do that more and eat more of that. So our brain sees sugar and it's oh, that's going to feel really good. You want that. Now, the challenge, especially if you're going through a stressful time, is cortisol increases sugar cravings. So there's that. And then we get stuck into the addictive cycle because it is so addictive. And our brain knows that it's going to feel really good if we have it, but it just perpetuates the whole problem. And then our blood sugar goes out of whack and we are hungrier more of the time. And then it makes fasting really hard. And it's just this vicious cycle that we get stuck in. So I really think like we kind of need to go cold turkey because we want to reset everything. So I think committing to, and I lead a sugar detox because it's hard for people to do because we have so many attachments. It's everywhere. It's such a part of our culture. It's hard to go anywhere, get any kind of food outside of home that doesn't have some sort of sugar in it. So it means that people need to be really prepared. You need to cook your own meals. You need, or be able to order really cleanly at certain restaurants if possible. So it's really making that commitment. You need to have, it always starts with having a compelling enough reason for wanting to do it because of the psychological and the physiological addiction of sugar, to be able to truly commit to resetting everything. You've got to have a big enough why for doing it. So I think starting there, and then making sure that you are having enough protein and fat will help with feeling satiated so that you can, eat those whole meals that are, low in sugar and then feel satisfied. So that's yeah, go ahead.
So do you have smoothies? Like for me, one of the things I do is if you guys want, I have a great free smoothie book that has about 20 free smoothies that I have. If you go to chantelrayway.com and click on free smoothie book, but it's about 20 free smoothies. And for me, when I'm really craving sugar, today I was, and so I stopped and we have a place called North End Juice Bar that I love. And I got it's kale, mango, and almond milk. And then I added protein and spirulina to it. So that was my smoothie. So I had the protein to kind of calm myself, with all that, the mango that was in there. And then when I have that, it fulfills my sugar craving. If I'm really like, oh my gosh, I've got to have.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, once you really reduce sugar, you reset your taste buds, because what sugar does is it kind of dulls them. So we need foods that are like more concentrated flavor to even, like, when you've been eating a lot of sugar, regular food doesn't taste as good. But when you take sugar out, and this is what my students tell me, it's like things like broccoli and cauliflower just taste so sweet and good, which, an average person eating a lot of sugar would be like, no, not really at all. But you become more sensitive to just natural whole flavors, and real food just tastes way better. So we get that natural dopamine hit, which, all food creates a dopamine increase, but it's not so exaggerated that we get stuck in this cycle of, overeating and like just being kind of obsessed with wanting food. Like we just think about it. We have this over desire that keeps us in this cycle, which makes it really hard because we're having to use willpower, which I always say willpower doesn't work. We don't want to have to rely on willpower. We want to be able to just balance out our bodies. So we're naturally just craving things that are good for us instead of craving unhealthy foods and sugar and processed foods and junk food and all that stuff.
So let's say it's your birthday. Let's say it's your birthday. Are you having do you have it where you say like once a week I have something, once a month? Or are you just saying?
No, I mean, for me, and this works. Yeah. So it works for me this way because it's about an identity. It's about like, I'm someone that doesn't eat sugar. So, and for me, it's, and this is also something that I teach, is like deconditioning our own desire. Because when we have a desire for something and then we say that we can't have it, it creates the feeling of deprivation. And nobody wants to feel deprived, because it's like you want something, but you know you shouldn't have, or you tell yourself you shouldn't have it. And then that comes back to trying to use willpower not to have it or try to control yourself. But if you decondition desire by not having that thing, and then you don't want it anymore, eventually you get to this place where you don't want it. It's like when I was in my 20s and, as a teenager, I smoked cigarettes and I haven't in like 20 years. And the thought of having a cigarette right now is repulsive. Like, you couldn't pay me to have a cigarette right now. But back then, it's like I had a lot of desire for cigarettes. So I had the desire, which created that urge and that craving, and then that led to me smoking. So once I didn't have that desire anymore, it wasn't hard not to have a cigarette. And I never thought about it. I never was like, should I allow myself one cigarette this week or on my birthday or any of that? Because it's like we become totally indifferent to the food. And I think that's the best way to just eat healthy consistently all the time, because you want what you can eat. And it's not like you're wanting things that you can't, quote unquote, can't eat. And then you feel this sense of deprivation and feel this sense of like punishment and all these things where, you know, people that have that kind of dieting mentality where they're either off or on, it's like it's taking up way too much brain space. And for me, one of the reasons was like, I don't want to think about it anymore. I just want it to be a non-issue. I want to focus on other things. And if my brain is like, ooh, I really want like a piece of chocolate, or when can I have my piece of chocolate, or when am I going to allow that for myself? It's like, I just wanted to be done with all of that. I wanted it to be a non-issue. I wanted to be indifferent to it. I didn't want to have the desire so that I didn't ever have to feel like I couldn't have it or I shouldn't have it and all that stuff that we put on ourselves.
Hey guys, I wanted to tell you I'm offering a free weight loss virtual Bible study. Now is the perfect time to focus on understanding true hunger and fullness and learn what the Bible has to say about it. All you have to do is go to chantelrayway.com/Bible study. After you sign up, you'll receive a 6-week Bible study video that you can watch on your own, or you can get a small group of people and do it together. That's chantelrayway.com/Bible study for your free 6-week Bible study course. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that the same analogy, when I was in my early 20s, I smoked as well for several years. And then same thing, I stopped smoking and I've never picked up another one again. But it is a matter of just saying, I'm just not going there. Yeah. And I do think they do talk about how sugar it can be as addicting as cocaine, because it's just so addicting. So you can get out of control with it. And even the Bible says, eating too much honey, which is sugar, can make you sick. And so you just have to be really mindful. And there's actually several Bible verses about that over and over saying,
there's nothing good about sugar. There's zero benefit to eating sugar. Like, we don't need it. So, for me, it's really, and as a health coach, I really want to be that example of health, and I want to walk my talk fully. And whenever I was even having just a little bit, it just felt like out of integrity with how I wanted to eat and how I wanted to live, and like the example that I wanted to set. So, but it's like having that reason that's big enough, and then committing to the process of deconditioning your desire, which in the beginning you have the desire, but you're not giving into those urges. So you're just allowing the urges, you're acknowledging them, and slowly not perpetuating the pattern by giving in every single time you want it.
Well, this has been amazing. Tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
So you can find me at my name, Dana, spelled Dana, Skoglund.com, and same on Facebook, Instagram, I'm on YouTube, all those places.
Awesome. Well, you guys stay tuned. We have another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks.
This has been a SIMPRONTO Media production.